Guild Wars 2 often doesn't stick to the established template of most MMORPGs. That is still the case with its first real expansion, Heart of Thorns. It brings many of the expected additions, like new zones and a new class, but it also avoids an increased level cap. It generally succeeds in getting the broad strokes right, although the details remain a little rough. The news story is easily one of the highlights here. Following the hunt for the dragon Mordremoth, it wisely injects a dose of uncertainty into the previously chummy relationship of the game's playable races. Many of the leafy Sylvari are now in cahoots with Mordremoth, which creates distrust and tension towards the ones who remain favorable to the Alliance. The new jungle area is a lovely place, with some of the game's best views hiding around what seems like every other corner of its 4 zones. Its big standout feature is its verticality. Events and story instances take place everywhere from the forest floor to the very canopy of the trees. It's sometimes daunting to figure out where you're supposed to be going as a result, but it's a bold design that forces you to consider what's above and below you. Navigating this greenery requires new skills, and that's where the new mastery system comes in. It replaces the traditional level cap with a bar that focuses on leveling select skills such as hang gliding, mushroom jumping, and learning languages in order to advance. The glider, in particular, is a joy, as it introduces a form of airborne travel without falling into the content-skipping traps of flying mounts. It's the act of leveling mastery skills that is sometimes frustrating. You'll find no traditional quests in the jungle. Instead, you'll find chains of dynamic events to build XP for masteries, and almost all of these require a group of players to complete effectively, if at all. It's wonderful when groups are available, but 2 weeks after launch, finding them is sometimes already a challenge without resorting to the cross-server group finder. Unlocking the first and most crucial masteries doesn't take long, but ArenaNet complicates the progression a bit by giving no indication that you need specific masteries to advance the story. The good news is that you only need to level them once, as mastery points are account-wide. That makes the experience of leveling alternate characters considerably more rewarding, especially since Heart of Thorns introduces elite specializations that usually drastically change the flavor of each class. They're generally quite fun and imaginative. Heart of Thorns introduces further variety in the form of the Revenant class, which allows you to switch between tanking, healing, or damage at will. It's certainly fun and flashy, and it smartly feels like a cool alternative rather than a beastly improvement over existing classes. A selection of group content rounds out Heart of Thorns features, such as an enjoyable new stronghold map that's inspired by MOBAs. There's also a sprawling, beautiful new world versus world battleground called the Desert Borderlands that grants powerful bonuses for holding keeps. But 2 weeks on, there were never enough people playing it for us to truly see it in action. The majestic new guild halls also mark a welcome social addition, but they suffer from prohibitively high costs needed to get the full use out of associated features like the new scribe profession. In an age when too many MMORPGs rely on the same old formula, Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns does a commendable job of evolving the gameplay that's made it so popular over the years. When it stumbles, it's in its ostensibly open-ended mastery progression that's more set in stone than it seems, and in its heavy group and dynamic event focus that doesn't always jive with empty maps. Even so, it does a good job of overcoming these shortcomings with an entertaining story, a new fun class, generally attractive elite specializations, and a new vertical focus on exploration zones. For more on Guild Wars 2, stay tuned to IGN.